It's been more than a year since Bernie Sanders first referred to those damn emails in a primary debate. And with the election ending a week from tomorrow, it could be those very same emails that make or break the election, depending on who you're rooting for, or in this case, rooting against. The latest controversy began on Friday, as you know, when FBI Director James Comey sent a letter to Congress saying they found new emails related to Hillary Clinton's personal email server, and that the agency plans to, quote, assess their importance to the investigation, although Comey does note that he didn't know yet if they were, quote, significant. As it turns out, those emails were found on at least one device shared by Clinton aide Huma Abedin and her husband, former Congressman Anthony Weiner. They were found during an investigation into accusations Weiner, a.k.a. Carlos Danger, sent sexually explicit messages to a 15-year-old girl. Following the announcement, Donald Trump was quick to say he cared about those damn emails, while Clinton was just as quick to call them into question.
This is the single biggest scandal since Watergate.
Hillary Clinton's corruption is on a scale we have never seen before.
It is pretty strange. It's pretty strange to put something like that out with such little information right before an election. In fact, it's not just strange. It's unprecedented, and it is deeply troubling.
Over the weekend, the FBI got the warrant it needed to go through the newly discovered emails, but so far there's no timetable for any announcement. It's been reported that Attorney General Loretta Lynch urged Comey not to send the letter to Congress, and former AG Eric Holder signed a letter along with about 100 other former federal prosecutors and Justice Department officials expressing concerns about the move. Among them was former U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts, Don Stern. Good to see you. We're also joined by Kevin Martin. He's partner and co-chair of Goodwin's Appellate Litigation Group. He previously clerked for Justice Antonin Scalia and has extensive experience in government investigations. Kevin, it's good to see you, too. Thanks for being here. Give us the thrust, briefly, if you can, Don Stern. What's the argument in this letter that you and your colleagues signed?
The basic argument is that the director made a colossal mistake, and he runs the risk of not only, in fact, influencing the election, but even as bad, appearing to influence the election. The Department of Justice, whether it's been a Republican administration or a Democratic administration, has for many, many years had a policy, a firm policy, that you don't do anything publicly, you don't take investigative steps, you don't announce things, you don't do things which, within the window before an election, could influence the election or be perceived as influence.
But he said because he had announced that to Congress that his investigation was complete in July, I know you weren't crazy about that either, the investigation, that he felt it was appropriate to say, well, it may not be complete. That rationale doesn't work for you?
No, it doesn't, because the announcement really was a non-announcement. That's the irony of the whole thing. The FBI didn't have access to the emails, they didn't have custody of them, they hadn't seen them. And so I don't know why he felt compelled to announce that it's something that we're thinking of, that we're going to look into. And I guess one other point I'd say, Jim, I find it deeply ironic that an investigation which has to do with confidential information being inappropriately released, i.e. the emails, the Clinton emails, that one of the rationales that Comey has used was he was afraid that if he didn't announce it to Congress, it would leak out. Well, what does that tell you? That he's concerned about his own FBI agents leaking information?
Kevin, do you agree with him?
I agree that Comey should not have made the announcement he did in July, but having made it, I have a hard time seeing where this additional announcement was out of place, particularly because, and here's the problem, for the last 2 or 3 months, Secretary Clinton has been using that July announcement to ward off concerns with her handling of these emails, including as recently as the debates over the last month. If he did not say something now, it would have been a misleading record.
So speaking of misleading, isn't it the press and politicians who have been misleading? The thing he sent to Congress was very clear. We don't know if they're pertinent. We don't know if they're significant. They're related. I mean, he did not implicate Clinton in any way.
He did not.
He just said we have new emails that we're going to investigate.
But interestingly, Jim, in that statement, he said, and this statement is susceptible of being misinterpreted. So it was I think, a very predictable event that the media, partisans on both sides would kind of seize on it. And I think if you're the public, what you hear is FBI investigation, emails, Clinton, and that's unfair. It's not only unfair to the system, I think, but I think it's a black mark on the Justice Department, and it's frankly unfair to Secretary Clinton, who's been kind of dragged through the mud on this for no good reason.
Speaking of the Justice Department, as I said at the top, Loretta Lynch and apparently Sally Yates, her Assistant Attorney General, urged Comey not to do this. Could they have ordered him not to do it?
My understanding is they could not order him not to do that, to do this. Again, however, my question is, were similar conversations had back in July when Secretary Comey came out and publicly said we're ending this investigation?
Well, they probably weren't, because Loretta Lynch was in an impossible position. At that time, she had to say whatever he suggests will follow because of that totally inappropriate meeting, even though she says it was innocent, with President Clinton on the tarmac somewhere out there in Arizona.
Right. I think she probably could have technically ordered him not to do it, but I think there would have been a fallout for that. And I have great respect for Jim Comey. I think he's a man of integrity, and he's got great experience. But being independent doesn't mean you're a
What if he
lone
was
ranger.
investigating Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was elected on next Tuesday, and a week later he said, by the way, I found evidence that suggests Donald Trump violated the law, and his dealings, Harry Reid wants him to look at his dealing with the Russians. I think there was a law violated. Right. Wouldn't you be screaming bloody murder?
No, because the reason why you have a policy that's well thought out, well established, well worn, well tested, is that you make those kind of judgments. You put those perimeters around your decision in advance without regard to the particular people. So it wouldn't matter whether it was Trump or Clinton. I'd be saying the same thing.
Isn't there some precedent here? Well, I continue to hear from virtually everybody who's done what you guys have done, particularly you, that the precedent is you don't interfere with elections. How about in 1992 when a federal grand jury indicts Caspar Weinberger, the Secretary of Defense, and I think his name was Lawrence Walsh, the special prosecutor, says there are notes that suggest that George H.W. Bush, the president running for re-election, lied. I don't know if you used the word lied, about knowing about the Iran-Contra deal. I mean, isn't that interfering in an election 3 days in advance?
Well, to some extent, yes, but sometimes it's unavoidable, right? So the question is, in that particular instance, was it unavoidable to indict when they did indict? There may have been statute of limitations issues, for example. This might be another situation like that, where, unfortunately, based on the conversation or the press statements in July, which should not have been made, Comey found himself in a position where some step had to be taken.
Well, there's another point there, Jim, and that is that he was a special prosecutor. He was not subject to the typical rules and standards of the Department of Justice.
Do you think that Comey violated the Hatch Act that says government officials can't act to affect outcomes of elections? I'm obviously giving a paraphrase of this thing. Did he violate that law?
No, I don't think he did.
Do you think he violated the law?
No, not at all.
The thing that's most worrisome to me is when I read articles in the last 24 hours suggesting that they may be rushing at the FBI to analyze these emails as quickly as possible. The implication is, at the end of the sentence, is that if they do them quickly enough, Saturday or Sunday before the Tuesday final vote, that they're going to tell the public whether she's exonerated or not? Is that even possible?
And I think that would be a mistake. I mean, at this point, whatever damage is done has been done. They should analyze these things in due course and do what prosecutors do, which is make a measured determination of what to pass on to the prosecutors.
Is there anything he can do in the next 8 days to tamp down the impact of what you think was an inappropriate statement and you think is only appropriate because he did what he shouldn't have done in July? Anything he should do in the next handful of days?
I think in the next week or so he should stay out of the spotlight.
How about you?
I think he should be more forthcoming and fulsome about the limitations of what they know.
So he should speak.
I think he should speak. I think he should make clear in a very forceful way, look, my statement has been misinterpreted. We don't know anything. We don't know anything about these emails. We don't have these emails. And anybody who draws any implication from my letter to Congress is wrong.
Don, thanks. Nice to see you. Kevin, appreciate your time as well.
You too.
Appreciate both.